Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Midnight Reviews. This is Moon Knight Episode 5, the penultimate episode of Moon Knight. I am the podcaster of Vengeance, Travis Snell, and I'm joined by...
Adam Harcaster, Dylan Moss.
I am the other personality, Jessica.
And the whose boat was it, Taylor Field?
That's very fitting. I didn't even think about the vote. I didn't see your
throwback
nickname,
at this
and yeah, that's a throwback. And you have to be an OG fan because that's not even on a podcast. It's on a Video Game Awards 2017 watch along. You'll never understand the reference if you go watch it, and you still will never understand the reference. Very deep cut. But that's why you check out our anniversary cast because the story's somewhere in there. But that's why you also check out the Midnight Reviews because they get random rants like that. Taylor Fieldwork and the final content. We just did a big podcast, you mean Jessica, talking about CinemaCon, talked about the Batman announcement, Sony announcing, huge property in El Muerto
El Muerto.
El Muerto with La Rona sequel coming too. But where can they find that all?
Ladies and gentlemen, you can find us with your internet connection in the search bar. GeekVerse.ca is our home base. GeekVerseCast is our Twitter, and GeekVerse on our Facebook.
Yeah, everything about us is links below. Video, audio, podcast, network, Manscaped code, everything. Patreon, that's the best way to support us because the more you support us, the more content we can provide. Ad-free, exclusive, early episodes. Next week, also, we'll be doing Moon Knight, the finale. And then also next week will be Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness. It is here. So lots of good things popping off. We'll give you our non-spoiler thought of this episode. Then we'll get into our spoilers. So, Dylan Musk, what did you think of episode 5?
I loved it. I thought this was just fantastic character stuff. I think this is going to a level of darkness that we haven't really seen in the MCU, so I thought that was interesting as well. I'm also, I guess, maybe I won't say some of these words because they're spoilery, but I'll save that thought for later. But overall, I really liked the episode, and yeah, definitely went a different direction than I think me or any of us were kind of anticipating, but I'm really happy with the direction it went and where it concludes. And I think, man, it seems like there's going to be a lot that has to be happening in this last episode, but we'll see what happens next week.
Mm-hmm. Jessica.
I think this is probably my favorite episode so far. I definitely... Non-spoilers. I like kind of getting all that backstory about things.
Backstory thing.
And then tying
people.
And then tying in, more of the kind of mythology piece of it, Egyptian mythology. I do just, non-spoiler shout out to
Oscar Isaac. Daddy Oscar Isaac.
This episode, there's a lot, and I think he does a really great job in kind of keeping Mark and Steven, they're separate entities in a way, right? Mm-hmm. So those are my kind of non-spoiler thoughts.
Taylor Field.
Oh, man. I don't know. It wasn't super hot of an episode for me.
Spicy.
Yeah, like I.
Oh, really? I thought there was a butt coming. I thought you were baiting us in there for a second.
No. I would like. I don't know. I feel like last week's episode definitely was kind of more like my stride with everything going on, and like, don't get me wrong, like I like how they kind of tied certain things together, and again, like Oscar Isaac's, like him portraying. Again, Steven and Mark, like even side by side, is not a spoiler, we saw it as last week. Like it's incredible how he just delivers it as you think that they're two separate actors playing two different characters, but he's just that good at these roles. So I like that, but yeah, there just was a few things that kind of pulled me out of it, and again, not much of a spoiler, but the hippo probably was.
I thought you were more on the positive side of the hippo last week because I was the only one really.
Yeah, but the way that they kind of like went with it in this episode, I wasn't driving. I had a few moments where I thought like some stuff was gonna happen, but it's just I don't know. I feel like it was just there were some cool concepts in this episode, but it just kind of took a turn that like this is like I felt like it was dragging on, but I get like, okay, like this needs to happen for story's sake and development purposes to get us to where we gotta go. So I understand that, but it just wasn't driving. So
Wow, I cannot wait to get into spoilers to talk to you about what's that's a rare that a Marvel thing's not jive and everything like that. So yeah, as we talked about, I was very worried. Dylan put this in the Discord, and when I saw the hippo as the thumbnail of this episode, oh man, because I did not like the hippo last week reveal. And yeah, I think I'd honestly be somehow more on Dylan and Jessica's side. I think this is my favorite episode. I've always said this with the Moon Knight stuff that I always prefer the Mark and the characters dynamic more than Moon Knight. And I love Moon Knight being a superhero. Don't get me wrong. I do wish we got more of that, him in New York or London doing, vigilante things. But I like that dynamic of these characters and the mentality of this person being shattered and trying to figure it out. So I think it was a good balance for the most part. I think they do still sometimes go a bit much on humor for me, but I think it was a good balance of there's a lot of tributes to the comics. There are things that are very similar that happened in the Lemire run and kind of some of the origin stuff, but they also made it their own. So I did like a lot of the things in this episode. I liked it was trippy again, and you guys already mentioned it. I feel like I've been saying this for years and everything, but I always talk about my list of best actors and actresses, and Oscar Isaac is someone you could just make a case who's like the best guy in the world right now, acting wise. Like what he has to do in this episode and what he's done like many other times, but in this episode particularly, I think he really shined in throughout the whole thing, but multiple scenes. Just like, man, this guy can just go and he has the goods. So, and it's one of the main reasons why, in 2019, it's like, man, I wish we could get him, because you need someone that can pull off the duality, trilogy, quality, whatever you want to say. I don't know what all those words are, but multiple characters. And it's interesting because I do agree with Dylan, and that's been my hugest complaint about the Disney Plus series so far, that other than Loki, all the finales have been super rushed and they just like race to the ending. And it's funny, a few episodes ago I was like, oh, I'm not worried about this with this show, because I feel like we know it's just going to be the big finale where he fights the bad guy and that's it. Where it's not as clear, and that's my worries, if we are still getting the big finale where he fights the bad guy, there's a lot of stuff we got to do in between. So I'm hoping that it's going to be, even this episode to me ends in a very different way, but I'm hoping we have a nice landing. And Clay puts this in non-spoiler. He says, has this been confirmed as a limited series? Because I think there's room for the series continuous series. As of right now, it's limited because for the Emmys, they put Loki in a show category and they put this and Hawkeye in limited series. So when they do that in the Emmys, that means, yeah, it's a one and done for now. You can always come back and do it eventually. But and as of right now, Oscar Isaac only signed up for this. He doesn't have one of those multi-Marvel contracts where he says 6 movies, just did this. And then if they do more, they got to do a new contract. So I think it is limited. And I think that is a shame. I do want more of this show, whether it's this or a movie. So we'll see. I thought I had one other point. I'll probably think about in spoilers. I think it was something about Taylor said that was a bit more on the maybe negative side, but no, good episode overall. I'm excited for next week to see where we go. Anything else we want to shout out non-spoilers before we hit the switch? All right, going once, going twice, sold in the lady in the white gloves. So we're going to take our first ad break and we will be right back. And we're back. So here we go. X-ray says sadness. I want you to explain why sadness. But yeah, that would be, I'm jumping to the very end, but that'd be the best thing if next week, not the best thing, but it'd just be so funny if episode 6 was just a Layla episode and Mark just like went to heaven, like he just died. Like there is none of that. Go ahead, Jessica. I remember what I was going to say, but you go ahead. I'll write it down.
Has there been any type of confirmation that we are getting his third personality in this limited run?
Well, I would think so, that it's going to have to happen next episode, which I think so either it has to happen next episode or there's an end credit scene of the last thing of Moon Knight 6 is that someone breaking out a sarcophagus. But I just feel that either that's just a tease for people like, well, I can't be a tease because a few episodes ago, remember when someone murdered a bunch of people and they're like, it's not me, it's not you. So either there's going to be, I think, a tease for a continuation down the line, or it's going to have to come up next week. And I think that's where it is interesting because I feel like, again, that's a lot to do. If you got to do the third personality, he has to get back. You imagine he has to get the Moon Knight Khonshu powers back and then beat the bad guy. Now, could be a full plus hour, but that is a lot. So yeah, everybody and their mother and the lady in the white gloves thought that it was going to be Dylan's liking that one. Everyone thought and I was with them that Jake was going to be the third personality, would be out tonight, and it wasn't. It wasn't even really hinted about. When they were going through those rooms, I'm like, oh, here it comes. They're going to go into some memory or something, but still nothing.
I'm kind of hoping for a post credit. I think after next episode. I don't know. That just seems like another like huge thing to implement last minute. But that's why I thought the trajectory of this episode was going to be that to balance the hearts, they needed to get the third heart, and they were going to go find the third guy.
Yeah.
They didn't even hint at that in any way. No. Like they didn't even look at that door again. Like that is never even a thought. But it sounds like we all kind of started with that being what we thought the premise was going to be.
Well, that's what's interesting, because I don't know how to take this as far as, you know, the Egyptian lore. So it was either he was going to be with these dead people in the sand, right, or he was going to pass on to like what, Egyptian heaven or something, or what? Like, where is he at the end when he's in this green field, right? To me, I'm there. That's like the afterlife, right?
It's like the equivalent of the ancestral plane, like from Black Panther, right?
Oh fuck! Black Panther shows up. What does Mark see? You know how T'Challa saw a bunch of panthers? Like, what is? I guess just like a bunch of birds, right? For Khonshu, I imagine. Not as cool, but
just a bunch of birds.
Yeah, but my question is, I thought that they were going to need that third personality to get at this facility. If he's in this ancestral plane, like what's next? Like where's he going? How's he going? You know, like that's.
See, I thought he like succeeded, and he's just gonna get beamed up essentially at the start of next episode. Like I felt
beamed
like
back to life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I guess we'll probably cut to Layla getting Khonshu back, and then like that's when it would like he's having this moment, and like he'll kind of wake up right as I guess he's been given the healing powers from the suit. Is kind of what I would think.
Yeah.
But I think like he's done his character journey that he needed to do to get to that point.
Yeah, which is strange because like he had to drop off. Like I think we all had the same idea: is he need the third heart to put it on there. But then so he loses. We're going over, but he loses Steven. He falls down, and that's his way that he's balanced. It's kind of like he's accepting his whole life, and he's letting go of the baggage of Steven, so he can put it all on Mark. But if there's a third person out, it's like, well, I don't know if that should count. Like I feel like you'd still be unbalanced if there's a third personality you don't even know about technically, right?
Yeah, that'd be buried pretty deep down at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about it, you know, what has to happen, you know, getting Khonshu back and the final fight and everything, it really doesn't seem, and then I guess even whatever continuation in the afterlife we're going to have, doesn't seem like there is enough time for Jake at all. It seems like it almost has to be an end credit scene or just not touched on at all.
Well, I'm just trying to think of a way around it. Like, is there a last way to make it make sense? I don't know. Like maybe next week they'll show something. Like this the whole time. But what do you think about this, Taylor, as far as the Jake of it all, or third person, whoever it may be? But what do you think is going to happen with that next week?
I am starting to think that they're going to save it. I don't think they've only hinted at it, but I don't see there being enough time in less than 59 minutes for them to make a big case about this and add this whole other story component, because regular GA people that have been watching maybe haven't even picked up on this extra personality, or maybe they've seen the other little like Easter eggs for it, but they're not fully well versed in what's going on. So you're telling me that they're going to throw in probably like it would have to be like a 10 minutes of just like exposition to let the GA know or be aware that there's this extra third persona attached to this, when you have to deal with like Khonshu getting out, you have to deal with what's happening with Steven, you have to deal with how they're going to get revived, what's going to happen with Layla and that dynamic, and what's going to happen with, you know, Ethan Hawke as the villain, how they're going to wrap up with him, how are they going to defeat the evil goddess or god that's rising up. Like there's so many things they got to do within 59 minutes. So I think that's probably what the takeaway was for me too with this. Like I like many things with this episode, but I feel like there's so much to do, and as for a penultimate episode, I feel like that's what's kind of detracting it a little bit for me. So,
does anyone here feel like there's a chance that we don't ever go back to the Egyptians part, like this, like the whatever the finale is happens in the? I guess he's in the plane, but even as a insane asylum, where maybe like, is there a chance we don't go back there and we don't have these moments, or do we? Like, I think we'll end up back there and doing that, but I don't know. Does anyone else have that idea?
Well, like I said, my current theory would be that, like at the start of next episode, either we like start right when he wakes up, and then we kind of get a flashback of like what she did to get Khonshu back and save him, or we just go to that sequence and then cut to him like I don't know 5-10 minutes later when she does that. But maybe that takes like a big part of the episode. And but then like what do you do with your main character at that point? Is he just backseating while
Yeah.
we go on this other side journey in the final episode? Like that doesn't seem like it would be a good pacing decision in any way. But also, I mean, this episode just cut out all those other characters. Right? I mean, I guess not too many other characters that it cut out since we still get Harrow in another way. But yeah, I don't know. I kind of think I just don't know what else we had to do in that particular location in Egypt, like in that tomb, right? I think we were kind of done with that particular spot, but I think we're going to go back to real life, quote unquote. Who even knows what's real anymore?
Like you're saying the tomb that we started at a few episodes ago when they were digging Ahmed or whatever. Is that the
yeah, like
tomb
where
you're
he
talking
got
about?
shot.
Yeah.
And
Like
yeah.
like I feel like it's literally in a video game right before it's like, do you sure you want to do this last quest? It might turn off all your side. Like I don't think there's only one thing to do there, and that's to beat Harrow, I imagine, right? If we go back there. So like maybe the episode just starts and he revives and Layla already is like, I have the Khonshu statue. Like while you were out, I don't know, is his body gonna just be like I guess the other thing is like Inception, where it's like how much time has passed for everybody else. Like, do we see him shot and then he gets like put right back in his body? And it's only been like a few minutes later, or is it literally hours later and his body's been like chucked outside and maybe there's some time for
it
Layla
have to
do
be
some
done
stuff?
right and not in the way of like a cop out where like, oh,
Mhm.
you know, we ran out of time, so we're just kind of skipping over. It's been like a month, you know, he's back now, but like it has to be done within a reasonable time.
A bit a month. I think a month is a little extreme. Yeah, yeah. Amit's out. Layla's dead. Yeah, it all really went to crap, Mark. Like I don't know what you're thinking
Well,
here. But.
I guess a question then, like, do you guys think that Steven's just gone for good, or are they gonna? Is he gonna exist somehow? Because obviously the body still is there, so maybe they could split that personality out again. But because I think if we do get this third character, whether it's next episode in a post credit that we explore later on, I think it'd be kind of a bummer if we never see the interaction between that third character and Mark, that third character and Steven, like that kind of triangle of it. It'd be kind of awkward to just keep switching. Like he always has a second personality, and this one dies off, another one jumps in, and there's always two, or the rule of two. So what do you guys think? Is Steven gone for good, or is he coming back somehow?
I don't think he's gonna be gone for good. Like you said, it's a personality. It's not him himself. I feel like he could look deep into his subconscious and pull him out again, since their lives are so intertwined. In the beginning, I wouldn't have said that. They're completely separate entities. They don't know that each other exists. But at this point, they're working together to share this body.
Yeah, it's weird when you get this heady stuff because like I feel like him being counting as a heart and being thrown off the boat and like as almost like a physical body, it should count as we should never see him again. But I feel because it is internal that he can bring it back. I do hope if we see him again, though. Honestly, I don't want it to be next week. I want it to be something down the line, whether it's a show or a movie or him whatnot. Like I could see it going for a while, but I feel if he just comes back next week, this will make this episode, if you were to rewatch it, feel a little lackluster because it's supposed to make you feel like Mark is giving up something, right, to get through this passage, like something momentous. So even if Steven comes back, a couple years later, you might feel it, and it's like, okay, he came back, but it's earned. Where if there's this big moment where he gave something up, but then an hour later or whatnot, Steven's just back and he can recreate it. Why do I feel the stakes? And again, it's weird because I'm arguing why do I feel the stakes of this man's condition, like Jessica said, he could just make it up again. But I think we'll see Steven again. I just don't know if it's next. I don't know if it's next week again too. That'd be a lot if you bring Steven back. I guess what does he just look over and Steven's there and huzzah, So I want to have a little weight to it. The loss. So
maybe that's the post-credit scene is Steven coming back. He's living his life after everything that's gone down, and all of a sudden Steven's there again, and we just don't get the third personality at all.
Who's in that sarcophagus then? Who killed those people? Then you have a bunch of plot holes of like what were we doing here? So, All in the Game says this is Oscar's Emmy submission episode. 100%, he's gonna submit this one. Clay says he was sidelined a bit in episode 4. I think he can be gone for a little bit, but with it being the finale, I think explosion needs to be or exposition. Exposition story. If you've noticed, video listeners, my right eye has eyebrow and it's killing me, but it needs to be quick and short. These episodes have been. Yeah, I think you can do that with most stuff other than like Taylor said. I feel like if you introduce a third personality, you either have to do two things. You have to introduce it and then leave it as a tease, like, oh, we're going to explain this more down the line. Or you just don't do it, because if you introduce them, I feel like there's just tons of baggage there. Especially we got a whole episode to explain Steven. That's what episode 5 is, and that's my favorite. But we got this whole dynamic of, oh, this is why he has a different personality, which I think for me, I think the only thing that didn't work for me was the reveal of Steven having the realization of, oh my god, I'm not the real one. I just feel like from episode 1, everyone's like, yeah, you're like, Mark's the real one. I thought they were going for a real Fight Club thing where Edward Norton finally realized, like, oh no, this is not the situation. I think they should have done more, like in episode 1 when he was calling his mom. We're all like, his mom's not alive, his mom's dead. They should have had an actress responding, I think, in retrospective, like talking to him, and we actually think his mom could be alive. But when he calls his mom 3 times in an episode and he's just leaving messages, like, I don't think they did enough to make me believe Steven was the main personality for that reveal to really hit. I feel like we just kind of always assumed Mark was. So when they were playing up in this episode, like, no, Steven, you're fake, I was kind of caught off guard, because I kind of thought once Layla got introduced, we established no, Mark is the prime personality, so that's one thing that didn't work for me, was that reveal of, no, Steven, it's not you.
I want to answer that, but I quickly want to go back and just like say one more possible thing, because we've talked a lot about how, or particularly Travis, because you've read the source material, and how how much they've changed this character from what he is in the comics. And like, I'm just thinking about, like, I know I'm jumping the gun here, going past like even this last episode, but
Avengers 6, lay it on me, go.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. Like, next time we see Moon Knight, if this is a limited series, which, as you said, obviously could change, but like the next time we see him is going to be in some team up, maybe it's some small role. Like, I just don't know how you're gonna be able to have the bandwidth in whatever this project is that he's in to like dig into, like, oh, here's this new third personality, and have like the same level of intrigue that we got between Steven and Mark. I just don't see how that's possible. So what if their idea with Moon Knight, which would probably be a really big bummer for you and the other comic book fans, is that they're trying to make it, okay, this season is him going through that journey, and then it's resolved, and he doesn't have the multiple personality thing anymore. He's solved his issues, you could say, and he's just this one guy who goes ahead and fits much better in the team ups, because he's much more straightforward and understandable in like a whatever Midnight Suns movie, whatever it ends up being.
Oh yeah, no, the second they released, he's very different, but the second they released a picture of Mr. Knight, I was very worried about that, because Mr. Knight is a character that took decades to get to, and the fact that we got him in episode 2,
and now he's gone for good.
Yeah, and now he's gone. I honestly have said that on here, Marvel Alliance, that I thought they were just trying to get him to be the point of the Hulk where he could appear and stuff. And I think there's a chance, because the other thing is that, like, it sucks. It's a good thing for him, but Oscar Isaac is like a dude that isn't a lot of stuff. It's not like he's just Downey who did Iron Man pretty much, and that's it, right? Oscar's always popping up in different shows and movies and things. So I think he's unfortunately going to be more of a team up guy, I think, because with the MCU, we've seen it 3 ways, where you had WandaVision, and Wanda went in team ups, and then you had Loki, they got a season 2, and then you had Falcon Winter Soldier, which surprisingly they said, oh no, we're doing Captain America 4, and Falcon's going to be in that movie as Captain America now. So we've seen different versions, and I think they'll go the Wanda version, where they'll put him in movies, and then they can always have something traumatic happen, and he can have those personalities come back. But I think they'll make it that Mark, the mercenary who can turn into the Moon Knight guy, will come back and kick ass, which I don't mind, but yeah, for me it is disappointing, because I think there's a lot more to this character. It feels like this season just kind of rushed through it a lot, just so we could get to a point of, well, we got another hero and he's played by Oscar Isaac. Cool, So Taylor, Jessica, you got any thoughts on that? About what do you think? Obviously, we'll know more next week, but what do you foresee the future right now without us seeing the finale?
I hadn't actually really thought about that. This kind of being the cure, I think is kind of the word that was used. But I actually think that is a very real possibility it does make a lot of sense. Then you don't have to introduce Jake. You know, there was a hint at a third personality, but you don't have to show him.
Mhm.
But if you decide to do another run of the series, or you decide to do a Moon Knight movie, at that point, then you could bring that third personality in that was hinted at. You know, then when he is in these team ups, they only have to deal with the one personality, the one Moon Knight. I honestly, it seems kind of like the best from a making movie standpoint, not necessarily from an audience standpoint, but for moving forward, it almost seems like the best option.
Even though, like, what I'm also disappointed is I thought the fun of what they could have had with Midnight Suns is they bring this Moon Knight guy, they need this hero, and then they have to deal with all these fucking personalities. Like, I just thought about, like, imagine in the middle of battle, like, them flipping back to Stephen Grant and him, like Avengers, Battle of New York, and Stephen Grant's in the middle thing out, and, like, fuck, like, what am I doing? Like, there's all these things going on.
Well, he knows how to fight now, Travis.
Yeah.
Didn't you see?
Yeah, that was his whole thing, and that's where exactly he kicked ass, and that was almost his resolution. But that's what I was kind of hoping for. Like, hey, this Moon Knight guy, he can really help us out. It's like Bruce Banner. He's really smart, but at any point he could snap and turn the Hulk, and we can't control him. That's what I thought Moon Knight literally was going to be. Like, he could, and even with Jake, maybe they will play that up. Like, he could be a more villainous or more violent side and stuff like that. But yeah, I think, like Dylan said, I feel like they've kind of cleaned up. And now, yeah, even with what's his name? Steven, yeah, he was kicking ass at the end there. So I don't think he would have that same response of being the fish out of water in a battle.
I mean, even still with that idea, if like I don't know what's going to happen with Khonshu. We'll find out next week because we didn't see too much of him this episode, though we did see a little bit kind of in flashback, so to speak. But yeah, like that could be a thing too. We're still in those team ups. Like maybe he's only one personality, but he still like has this random Khonshu guy who's egging him on to do things and messing with him, and you know, putting little sweet nothings in his ear about the other heroes that he's teaming up with, and saying, "Here's all the bad things that Doctor Strange did. Here's why you shouldn't trust this guy."
And you could have where all the characters are watching him off the side, like talk to himself, and they're just like, yeah. So yeah, you got that aspect. So what about you, Taylor? What do you think gonna be without seeing the finale, without knowing how that ending part goes? What do you think's gonna happen?
Like just in terms of like his
Moon Knight's future after this, or just anything in general. What do you see? Do you see this being, like Dylan said, where this could be the end of Personas for a little bit, or do you think by the time we end next week, you'll have Jake, Mark, and Steven all together, and they're off on their merry way?
I could kind of see Marvel not hopping on the bandwagon of different personalities going forward, but I feel like, again, that's not staying true to, certain elements of the comics, and I feel like, okay.
Don't worry about that. They don't care about that.
Okay. Yeah, they did axe
Mark did not have
Steven.
a brother that died in a cave.
They did axe Steven in this episode, and you know what? That's fine. But I have a strong feeling they're just going to pop him back in the next episode. They're just trying to create that dynamic for the penultimate episode. As far as Jake goes, I really don't think we're going to see that. I think wherever we see Moon Knight next in the future, whether it may be a crossover show, who knows, probably in a movie though, he'll appear. And I think the audience, again, we have to remember these shows are created so you don't have to watch them, but you can watch the MCU movies, and they're like, you can dabble in both worlds, right? Or you can watch just the movies and not indulge in the shows, and it'll still make sense. It won't compromise what you're getting into. So I feel like, hey, if they just bring in Moon Knight with no Steven, then that kind of conflicts with that, because then people are going to be like, oh, what's this Steven coming in later on? I need to learn all this stuff. And I think they're going to, when they introduce Moon Knight into the movie, he's got to be as he was, in this show. Multiple personalities, whether it's Steven or Jake. And so...
Well, the game says we're going to have an episode 6 problem like most of the shows. Yeah, I think so, but that's just because they're really set on the 6. They're really set.
That's so weird.
I think it's purely a budget thing. The same way Netflix, remember, is always set on the 13. And it's just like, just change. I feel like, again, 8 to 10 might be the perfect spot. But yeah, for me, we'll see. But other than Loki, the finales have always been a rushed or a problem. And
maybe the Lord of the Rings show could lend them some of their episode budget.
That'd be a good idea. Yeah, pay for better hippo analysis and whatnot. You go ahead, Taylor.
I was just gonna say, isn't like 6 like a number of reference with the devil? So like Mephisto confirmed or something like that. Isn't that
Well,
there?
666 is
There you
not
go.
just 600, but yeah, there you go. Mephisto confirmed for Taylor Field. Taylor, I want to hear after this next ad break some more problems with this hippo, so we'll be right back. All right, we're back. So Taylor, you had some problems with this hippo. Lay it on me, because last week you were digging it. You're like top 10 MCU character. I was very surprised. You had a
Top
wallpaper.
5, actually.
Whoa, top 5. But why were you not digging the hippo this go around?
The voice really just was not jiving with me, and there was one like it's just like a mom like at the food court in the mall or something. The way they were just talking like on her cell phone, I was like, this is just really weird for a Egyptian god or goddess. And lo and behold, she I guess she started like she was fumbling with like her transcripts and stuff, which is again really off-putting. This is just like classic Marvel humor, I guess. And then on top of that, there was a moment where she pulled, it was like a shot from behind her and she was fumbling with her hands. I was like, I legit thought she was going to whip a cell phone out and start like texting something. And I thought this is just really just weird. But that's how they set that whole sequence up with this character to make me think that. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all. Like, it's just, I think they did a poor job with this. Like, give me more. I'd rather more like the Law and Order Egyptian gods scene than more of this. So.
It's just a bot. I imagine X-ray, but it's sadness again. It's personality. Yeah, yeah, the hippo still didn't work for me. It felt a little bit better this week, I guess, but I didn't need the humor, especially because the whole episode was pretty dark. So I felt like they just had to cut back to her every once in a while and be like, I can steer this ship, and she's doing funny stuff. And I think she went back and forth. Like when we saw her in the White Room, she looked very, I don't think the greatest, but then there's times where she's like on the boat where she's again when it's ever darker look better. So I thought the hippo was fine, but I don't know. I could have taken out, if she would have just been there, said what they need to do and left, I would have been happy with that. So luckily the rest of the episode was so strong that it didn't really bring it down for me, but I'm didn't love the hippo. Jessica, where are you on the hippo gate?
It was definitely my least favorite part of this episode.
Yeah.
And I agree with Taylor. The voice is just, even last episode, the hi, I was like, oh goodness. And this episode was not any better. I don't know that I got mom at a food court, but it definitely
Very specific.
took me out. And I agree, like, you know, if she is supposed to be guiding people through the afterlife, why does she have all these cards and doesn't remember things? And it was just kind of awkward and fumbly. Weakest part. I don't know what exactly would have been better as a guide, because it is supposed to be, you know, the Greek mythology, but it wasn't. That wasn't it.
Taylor or Dylan, it's up to you to save the hippo. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm just true neutral in the hippo. Like none of it bothers me, but I don't love it either. I just feel indifference. It is fine addition. It works to push the scenes along, and the voice doesn't bother me. I don't know. I didn't feel like the jokes were over the top by any means. So I think I just have very very much nothing to say about it. But it doesn't bother me like it does for you guys. So maybe that's why I'm even more positive, because that wasn't a detractor from the episode for me.
She felt like an early GameCube game guide. Like, I'm not sure if you guys ever played the Star Fox Adventure game on N64, but all of those dinosaurs you bump into that are the nice ones, like, over there, Fox is the rock that'll help you. That's what she felt the entire time. And yeah, the boat stuff was fine enough. It was, you know, you can tell it's in the green screen room. I wish maybe the like the sand, like deceased coming back people were a bit more scary or something, because I feel like the room that had the dead people in the cafeteria, they were fucking scary. When they walked in, I loved that scene. That was great. Just everybody Mark's killed, and I loved the back and forth. And Steven's like, how could you, you know, oh, what the hell?
You
was the
remember
line?
all of them?
Oh
You try
yeah, and he's like,
forgetting.
yeah, you try taking a life and forget about it, and that was really good, because I think it also showed because I feel like most of the series Steven has looked at Mark as just like a barbaric brute, and I think this was the first time where he sees they both see their points of view, but he really sees his point of view of, okay, he got this way for multitude of reasons. One, because he was a mercenary, because he had a discharge from the army, and then Khonshu took him over. And then a very dark, definitely like some of the darkest stuff in the MCU, like when the mom just gets the belt. And obviously, you don't hear anything, you don't see anything, but just like just not great stuff as far as what you want to be seeing happen to a child and everything like that. So I think they did a good job of really setting Mark forward as far as why he was. But yeah, that cafe scene, really like just all the dead bodies, and when they see the kid, when Steven for a second like thinks he killed the kid, just lots of good untrustworthy stuff. Mark trying to pull him out of every room. So all that type of dark horror stuff really worked for me this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just to follow up on like the storyline with the mother, like that whole sequence to me was like why this episode like just stood out so much. I think the idea that he created Steven as this kind of coping mechanism, and how in the end, it was that Steven kind of convinced him or really assured him that he did nothing wrong and he was not to blame for this, and then was able to kind of be able to pass on and feel whole because he finally gave him that, or like that's what created the balance. I just thought the whole thing was great. But yeah, the darkness of it, what I mentioned in the non-spoilers part, because yeah, I mean, obviously the part with the physical abuse, and you hear the strap a couple times, so it's like
yeah.
But even just before that, just the verbal abuse from the mother earlier on, just blaming him, and like, we're seeing these birthdays, so we know that years have passed, and obviously when he's going off to, I don't know if he's not necessarily going off to college, he's just going off to leave when he's a bit older. And yeah, just how it's just unrelenting. Like she just continues to blame him throughout the whole time. Yeah, I think the fact that they showed it as years passing instead of just once at the funeral, I think really hammered it home and really justifies why Mark is such a damaged and fucked up person. And it was, I thought it was just great. Once again, that Steven was the one who could kind of maybe bring him back, and obviously probably still has some healing to do. He's, in the physical world, he still has a bullet hole in him, so he's got that healing to do. But yeah, that whole storyline I thought was great, and somewhere that I feel like the MCU hasn't gone before, and so I like that they took it a bit of a different direction than they have in the past.
Yeah, and it's funny, we talked about that, I feel like either episode 1 or 2 when they were getting into Steven and the life, and we kind of theorized, like, oh, what if Mark did create this as just a way to get away from it all, like he was a mercenary, bad life, and that's really what it was, like that's what he did. This was his kind of scapegoat to try and have, he said like, oh, you got to live nice, you got to think you had a mom that loved you, you got to not worry about anything. So it's like for us when we were watching, saying, oh yeah, Steve might be a little alone, people, he's having these sleep problems, so people kind of think he's a little weird, he's missing on dates, and it's like, oh, this is kind of a sad life. But for Mark, it was a peaceful life. He was like craving and really wanted and things like that. So, and it's kind of, I feel like too, it's almost even sadder where it's like he takes things from Stephen Grant, but then it also feels like he has like spots of his little brother in there as well. So just a fucked up situation overall,
Yeah.
So
I have a question that I'm just now thinking about, though, that
Yep.
doesn't, I just need you guys to figure this out for me. So
Yep.
he switches into Steven for the first time, but then he gets like beat up.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the first time, at least I think, that we see him get beat up. So what's up with that? Like he switches into Steven to get beat up. Like how is that solidifying a good memory with his mother then? Wouldn't it be that he switches into Mark when something, I guess switches back into Mark when something bad is going to happen?
Well, it was weird too because Steven even was like, I have no memory of this, like everything like that. So I wonder if right before he, which is a weird thing to say when we're talking about MC, but right before he got beaten, he switched back to Mark. But yeah, it was weird that Steven just had good memories about his mom.
We didn't see that, or
No.
I didn't notice it at least.
Yeah, it feels like he said you're supposed to be the good portal and whatnot, but no. And even Steven said, yeah, I don't ever have a memory of this, but he was the one there when the abuse started. So
There's
Yeah,
also a
you're
mirror
correct. That's
in that
definitely a bit
room.
of a plot hole.
Yeah, it seems weird. There's also like the mirror in that room. I don't know. I would have to go back and look to see if there was any sort of interaction between Mark and Steven like through the mirror there. Because I feel like any other time there's a reflective surface in the show, they're like, "Ooh, we got to throw both characters in there." So
Is that Jake
I
in
didn't.
there?
I don't know. I didn't catch if they did that with that scene.
I was watching the mirror. I didn't see anything because that's the same thing I thought. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, he's going to look at the wrong way or something in the mirror, but I didn't notice anything.
Taylor, what about you? And anything to add on the origin per se of Mark and Steven and all that jazz?
I really enjoyed that part of this episode a lot, getting that backstory showcase there, because it was a lot of traumatic things that I was not anticipating or expecting. At first, I thought, oh, is Steven this brother, and then he's just kind of like possessed by his brother or something, or adopted that personality, and then it turned out like, okay, his I guess trauma resulted in this other personality, which is really, really cool. I mean, it's sad, but
it's
it's cool but sad.
It's a well done way of doing it,
Yeah. So I'm curious to know what is the benefit of Jake. Was that like, when he's killing? I think Clay wrote like something in here too, like remembering like the people that he's killed, like is Jake kind of the person that's like the aggressor, and then Steven's the guy that's like the calmer. I think what you wrote, Clay, in the chat is probably something I'd be more inclined with kind of riding and believing.
Again, I am wondering where the Jake of it all fits, because in that room, I thought for a second they might, with the Cafe of Dead people, I thought they might go for a second he'd see some people and recognize them, but not all of them. He'd start to question things. But he seemed like he was like, yeah, I kill all these people. He justified it by, hey, these are bad people, they're predators, they're murderers, they're scum, they all deserved it. But I feel like if Jake we got a couple episodes, killed 3 dudes, he must have like a much bigger room. But again, they didn't see any of Jake's memories, so it's like they can't access him or something. I don't know. That's what's interesting, and I hope that they do pay it off next week, because then again, we're talking about plot holes and whatnot. You don't want that next week just to be. Of course, it's the MCU, they could tease something for the future, but I still think they got to pay it off a little bit when they've made such a big deal of it, because the times where he took out the bodies or sarcophagus, that's stuff you don't necessarily need if there's no payoff. You could easily take that out. So,
one thing, Travis, that you mentioned earlier, then we kind of got backtracked, was that you felt that the like plot twist that Steven was not, I guess, the original.
The Prime,
yeah. To me, I think I took that differently because I guess I felt throughout the whole show pretty much, or maybe after the first episode, because that was just a mind fuck. I never felt like Steven was the original. I felt like he was always added on at some point, and obviously we find out why here. But to me, I took that a bit differently, where I didn't feel to me like they were trying to plot twist that. I just felt like it was filling in the backstory for me without it being a plot twist, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'll have to watch it with that guys again. I just felt like the way they had him portraying that as like being so surprised, and I get it, he would be surprised because he's Steven, but I just thought like once he found out Layla was married to him, I feel like you'd feel okay, that's a big chunk of life that clearly I'm not a part of. But again, but we'll see going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it was supposed to be a twist either. I wanted to say this when we talked about it earlier, is because as soon as he enters into that memory, the mom says Mark. So from that point on, you immediately know that Mark is the main, because you're watching everything happen.
But
Mark.
That's why I don't understand, why does Steven react that way then? And near the end of the episode when he's like, I'm not the real one, I'm not the like it's near the back half of the episode. So that's why maybe it's just a writing choice or an acting choice. They got him play it like this, because that's why I thought there were all these signs that he's not the Prime. So at the end when he's acting shocked, that's why I'm not sure, okay, is that just a character beat? Because the way he was playing it felt like it was supposed to be us being like, oh man, it's not him, but Steven's all confused. That's where I'm confused on what they wanted to achieve with that scene of Steven having the realization, because I thought the same thing. Like the second the brother died, I thought, okay, Steven's gonna get it, he's gonna figure out, but he doesn't get it till like after the beating scene and stuff like that.
Yeah, I never really put much thought into what was the original or who was the original, but as soon as he walked into that memory and the mom said Mark, I was immediately like, oh, okay, well that's... So I didn't see that as any type of twist, because for the 3 or 4 memories leading up to that conversation, everything had been Mark as the main.
Yeah.
The real plot twist is going to be that Jake was actually the original, and he created Mark, who created Steven. And
the scene cut when Jake
personality
stood up and took his belt off. He's like, I don't think so, Mom, and just went to town.
Oh, no.
He's the one that kills his mom. But like we talked about, that was the breaking point there. And we got lots of scenes with Arthur Harrow too in the asylum. As man, Oscar Isaac. There's a couple scenes with I love his scene as Steven with Arthur at the end. That was really good.
Yeah,
Again,
I love that.
He's so good with the cadence. I really love when he is playing Steven, the character. But one of my favorite lines at the very beginning, he's like, "Well, how'd you get here?" And Arthur's just like, "I took the bus." Like his delivery, this episode, like Ethan Hawke. I like that. I was wondering what was going to happen, and they didn't ever play him off as creepy or knowing more. He just played like I'm just here to help you therapist. Now next week that could be a facade. Next week they might play that, like, I'm not sure again if he even goes back to the asylum or not next week, but even if there's not, I like that it was a whole episode of him kind of playing it straight and never he's up to something nefarious. Like that wasn't a twist where we got to break into Arthur's office because he has something we could get. I like that he was in his mind just trying to help him out, wisecracking. He was I just loved Hawk's vibe throughout this whole episode. So
Definitely, he was fantastic. I have some. I don't know if they're smaller notes, but I guess you mentioned the boat sequence briefly in that kind of set piece, so to speak. I really like the visuals of that. I like that when we first go into it. It did remind me of the Black Panther word that I can't remember right now.
astral plane or whatever.
Yeah, that one. Just in terms of like the sky, it kind of reminded me of that, and the color schemes, the purples and things like that. But I love that aesthetic. It reminded me of Soul. I forget what that realm is called in Soul. The Pixar movie.
Yeah.
But yeah,
In between or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I loved that sequence in that movie, so it was kind of fun to go back to a similar location. And then I love the setup of the scales. Obviously, we had Arthur earlier on in the show. He's just judging people with these scales on their arm, constantly going back and forth, and then we have the scales here going back and forth. So just using that idea in two different places, I thought was pretty clever. And I don't know if that's going to mean something. Like, I was wondering, like, is this because like Arthur is over his dead body right now, just like judging him or something, and that's why these scales are going off? So I doubt it. That would probably be a bit cheesy, but I like that they at least use that kind of imagery twice over it. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing the show's done good, where from that perspective, Mark and Steven, they tie a lot of things together from the first episode until now. And all in the game, ancestral plane, not astral plane. Thank you very much. There you go. Anything, I have little notes to shout out, specific like references they did, but anything to shout out as far as a big plot point? Taylor, anything on your mind you want to shout out, any discussion-wise?
I'm getting sleepy over here. Holy shit.
You're about to go to the ancestral plane right now. But
I'm ready to go.
Anything to
Fucking
shout
take me
out?
there, Feige.
Anything to shout out for this episode?
Oh, I mean, you guys already talked about it with Ethan Hawke in this episode. Like he delivered. Like he just fits right into just playing this charismatic psychiatrist that's like 1 minute has the security guards, I guess, or I'm not sure what their official title is, but like jabbing Oscar Isaac
orderlies.
with the orderlies, just jabbing him in the neck with this huge syringe, drugging him up, and then he like wakes up thinking, "Did you just jab me?" And he just plays it off like, "Well, no, we can't do that, against your will, but unless the situation really deems that it's necessary." Like he's just so charismatic, and you still feel this cringy kind of villain element coming out of him. He gets splashed in the face with water and he's not even phased by it too. Like he's super calm throughout this whole role.
And I like where the episode started, the first session they had, like, Mark was all bruised up, and the next time you see him, he's not. So it's that same thing of, like, you don't really know if Arthur could be lying to him or it is him. Because at the beginning of the episode, Mark just decided they were crazy until he saw the boat. He's like, the reason we're here is because we're nuts. Like, Arthur's completely right. Like, we got to get help. And then he opens up that room, and there's a boat there and everything. So, what about you, Jessica? Anything to shout out?
So this is definitely way going back in the conversation, but talking about the hippo, and Clay said, she was a transition character helping the audience to understand what needed to happen to move the plot. And I'm not arguing that at all. I totally get exactly what she was doing, but I don't think the hippo animation was weird to me. The voice was weird to me. The jokes didn't land. I get what she was trying to do, but I think it could have been delivered better. So I love the look of
Khonshu,
yeah, like absolutely amazing. Every time I see him, I'm just like, yes. But that hippo does not do it for me.
Maybe him and the hippo are gonna fight. That'll be cool, and the hippo wins. It's not great.
Really? What do you think the hippo's powers are?
Ooh.
Fertility.
I think she has like that, but I also think like the down B for Bowser. She has that move all
Butt
over.
drop.
Yeah, the butt drop big time. It's over for Thanos. You see that? Not gonna happen. What about you, Dylan? Anything else to shout here?
Yeah, few things. Sorry, Taylor. I'll try and make it quick.
No, take your
you can
time.
go to bed.
No, we're going another hour, Taylor. Buckle up, baby.
One, just I really need to shout out the cinematography in this episode. Just that whole sequence of, I think, like from when they jump into that room with all the dead bodies,
Yeah.
and then following his brother and like just going through all these doors, when they're like following up the staircase, going through this door, like all that transition stuff was fantastic and seamless, and it made the pacing just rock solid. So shout outs to whoever was doing the camera work in this episode, because they nailed it.
I agree. I was gonna say too, like effects wise, nothing, because I've had problems with the effects in the show. Nothing in the door realms or stuff like that stood out. Like it all felt natural and real and stuff like that. Like even
kind
when
of
they're
Monsters Inc. in a way too, you know.
yeah, like even when they were looking back at past thing from the show we had seen, like Mr. Knight and Conchi like changing the sky and stuff, it all just gelled really well. So yeah, I agree with you on that one.
Man, I feel so bad for the dad in this situation. You know, loses his son like in a very tragic way,
Yeah.
and then his wife just has just a very terrible reaction to this, and then she dies kind of young. His son just goes off. Like, is the dad still alive? Do you think him and Mark, like, where are they at? Because they weren't ever on bad terms.
No.
Obviously, Mark was kind of in a bad place, but the dad always seemed to be holding it together. So I wherever he is, I hope he's doing well out there.
He aged pretty well, I felt, from when we saw him when they were kids to when Oscar Isaac was a grown man. I'm like, man, you look like he'd just be his brother, not really his dad. But yeah, hopefully he's alive.
Well,
hopefully
even young Mark, for 2 years, he did not age a day.
no,
For a kid, that's pretty impressive.
Good genes the Isaacs have, but or I guess the Spectres have. But yeah, hopefully he's alive and like Jake didn't fuck him up or something like that. Like I don't know. And again, I'm just assuming because what they've said about Jake. Jake's not like that in the comic books. He's not like a loose cannon where he's always gonna kill someone. And that's what I guess I should touch upon too. Where there's been times where when Moon Knight first started, he was just a vigilante superhero. They introduced the split personalities a couple of decades later, and then they kind of redid the origin to it is similar to this, where he had a traumatic experience as a childhood, and that kind of split his memory. But it was nothing to do with this with the family. He didn't have a brother. He didn't have this abusive mom. What he had was an uncle who was a retired Nazi soldier who went after Jewish people. He was a serial killer, and Mark found that out, and that really fucked him up because he would always say these things to Mark. And they touched upon finally him being Jewish in this episode because it's a big thing with Moon Knight. Like I said, that's part of his whole reason why his spectrum breaks is because his uncle is a really fucked up serial killer. But yeah, they had the funeral there. Obviously, they had both funerals for the mom and the dad. Like they were wearing their Jewish garbs and whatnot and everything. So, and I absolutely love the scene. Like, of course, we tell us all the time, like actors crying, but when Oscar Isaac's in the street, I could feel that pain, man. Like that was just like, man, this I don't want my man to get out of this situation. This feels terrible, and I feel bad for anybody just trying to cross the street, go about their life, and they see just this man with a flask just ripping his clothes apart. But
and then the camera turns around and it's just like a disheveled version of him as well, and like these funny green pants.
Yeah. But that is so they did a similar thing to the origin as far as like a traumatic experience of childhood, just changed it up a bit. And honestly, for me, that kind of worked because I also don't think we had time to do a backstory of a serial killer uncle. I think in the comic books you have time to do that, and obviously I think
Next episode, it's coming.
Yeah, that's who's in that sarcophagus. But no, like that's where again, if they would have played up him being Jewish a bit more, I think they could have gone that. But that's again why I wish the show was a bit longer or multiple seasons. But alas, not a perfect world.
Yeah, I wonder how, I guess, Jewish people are going to feel about this, because it feels like it's just kind of dropped in there ever so slightly, and it would make really no difference to the show's structure in any way if he wasn't Jewish. So
no.
I wonder if like that community will feel disappointed or that they were not done justice here.
I think they will. They're pretty vocal with the Moon Knight stuff, and even with Oscar's casting, he has Jewish like lineage, but he's not a practicing Jew, so that's where people have been like, it's kind of a cheat. And it feels very much like Rise of Skywalker when they had those two ladies kiss in the background. It's like, well, look, we got we gay people are in our movie, but then
yeah,
it's like,
sometimes
yeah.
Disney does some weird stuff.
Yeah,
with
but then
that
it's like
kind
in
of thing,
China,
I
it's
think.
like edit them out, don't let them see it. So yeah, it's the same thing. Like you said, you could take out all the Jewish like references in this episode, and it'd be the same thing. So I think that is disappointing for that community.
and you would lose
hopefully-
like 15 seconds of screen time.
yes, yeah.
Jessica, sound like you were gonna say something.
Yeah, I just want to kind of go back to what we were talking about with his origin story there. And, as a mom, not of like a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old, but I, couldn't imagine telling my 9-year-old that he was responsible for all of this. Like, it's just even to go and play and be like, hey, don't let your brother die. It's pretty heavy to drop on this like 9-year-old kid. And, but also trying to think of how, this wouldn't be the same for Taylor and Dylan, but, if one of my kids died, how that would affect me. Like, it definitely, I don't know, made the episode impactful more so because of that. I can relate to that origin story more than I can a serial killer Nazi uncle.
Oh, come on. That happens to us all, It happens to, we all got that uncle who's up to no good,
It's 1 in
Yeah.
4, so it's not me. So I'm looking at you guys.
I think it's more like Dylan because like the character has a lot of references in the comics to being Jewish. That's why it comes up more because it's a guy who's going after his family and community, and like it's his uncle by blood, but it's not that. But I think in this show it does fit better, and the Nile's not just a river in Egypt, unfortunately. And like that's the thing, like not saying this would happen, but like that if you look at studies, lots of people that lose children don't stay together or things like that. It's a big fracturing thing for a family because that's hard to come back from. So I think that's a realistic portrayal in the sense of that can happen. I'm not saying that's not everybody. I'm saying if that ever happens to you, go out there and get some help. But I think it's definitely different because I think if you were to do the uncle thing, you need like an additional episode. Like that has to be its own entire episode. It's like, okay, here's how it happens. So anything else, Dylan?
I had two last thoughts. One, just the kind of intro of Khonshu, or at least seeing like the origin of when he kind of scoops up Mark as his protege, so to speak. Just the manipulation in that scene is great, and I like that it just shows like another side of that. Like it's kind of like a buddy friendship at times, but also he's like very intimidating.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that we kind of got that angle, and it was a quick scene, but I still felt like it worked, and it didn't feel rushed to me. So I enjoyed that.
And that two things, that is the exact rip from the comics origin of the Khonshu Moon Knight thing of he's in the desert with mercenaries, things go awry. He even dropped Bushman references. Bushman is his #1 villain. It's like his Joker. I was happy they did not show Bushman dead in that desert or in the bodies there. So Bushman is still out there. But yeah, everything he mentioned about it going sideways, stuff like that, and then crawling into this tomb and stuff, or this pyramid, that was exactly how he finds Khonshu. So do you guys sleep when we're dead?
Taylor's trying to. Right?
Yeah, Taylor's been sleeping with his eyes open the whole time. He's like Gandalf in fucking Return of the King, I just want to see it. But yeah, so very comic accurate.
Nice. I could see that being like directly pulled from a comic panel.
Yeah.
In the imagery in that too, he's this huge statue constantly looking up, and then as the manipulation kind of gets more and more and Khonshu's getting closer and closer, he comes out and it's actually closer to his face and leaning right over him as opposed trying to talk more on his level. It was, I don't know, when you learn about business and kind of how to talk to people and things like that, it's interesting to see that played into a show.
And like, not trying to prolong this longer, but like, Taylor, if that's you and you're on your deathbed and Khonshu's over there, are you taking that deal? You taking that deal to survive?
I'm not gonna lie, it sounded like a pretty sweet deal. So
Yeah, I would take it too. That's one thing I sometimes we see this sometimes today. We got this with Peacemaker, and I found the times on the boat when Steve and Mark were together, that's similar to our dynamic because you're talking about all these ways to figure something. And one of my favorite lines this episode of Mark's like, I can kill this hippo in seconds. Like, just give me some rope. He's like, I don't even have to hurt her. I can just tie her up. I was like, you know what? That'd be exactly how me and Taylor would figure out the situation. And I love how he kept trying to pitch to Steven that he could hurt or kidnap the hippo. That's what and especially because me not liking the hippo, I'm like, oh, this is right in my alley. finale. Mark Spector for life. So I like that Mark's one of his first rules was on. We're gonna kill this hippo, and she made it. She made it out. She'll be in Avengers 6, so that's good. Last
My
point,
last
though?
note,
Yeah.
a very, very quick tangent, is that just going to Duet and this underworld, Spelunky has a lot of like Egyptian stuff in it. Like there's the Temple of Anubis and all that. And one of the levels you can go to is Duet, and you go there by
Oh.
killing yourself in a very specific way, and then you go to this underworld and pull back up. This poster I have behind me is like all the Spelunky levels. This is like the Duet level. This is
Oh,
like
there
the
you go.
illustration for that. So I love all that, and like the Ushabti shrines and all that. Like all that stuff is part of Spelunky mechanics. So I'm liking that I'm actually recognizing a lot of these names just from playing a shit ton of Spelunky. So
So
there was
Moon Knight confirms Spelunky 3. He's
yeah,
gonna
no
be in
Moon
there?
Knights in Spelunky, unfortunately. But yeah, that in the trilogy, perhaps when we get there.
Oh,
That was
and
my last note.
Yeah, my very last note, because I had other notes, but I was bounced off Dylan, was Kid Mark said later Gators the same way that he was saying later Gators Steven was, like earlier in the show. And his mom
that.
said
Nice.
something too as a rebuttal that he, as Steven, said as well, like some sort of weird.
In a
like-
wild
Wild
crocodile.
crocodile.
Yeah, and he
Classic.
said that. So I like that when you go and watch it back, it has a very Fight Club feel. When you go and watch those first 4 episodes, you're gonna pick up like, oh, his mom said that. So, and I always like it's always good when games or movies or shows have kind of like a repeat viewing or playing aspect to them, and I think this does. And hopefully episode 6 does next week, because we got the finale. And it's funny because I think almost every MCU show up to this point had I think other than Hawkeye, just Hawkeye, they had post-credit scenes before the finale, even like episode 4 or 5.
Right.
I actually thought we were getting a post-credit scene here. I thought it was going to be Jake coming out just to like a little tease, but I fast forward and there was nothing. So next week's the finale. We'll be here. I think there's going to be lots to talk about, and I hope it ends well. And thank you everyone that was in the live chat. Thank you to everybody that's listening after. And I promise when you hear from us next week, it'll not be boring.
See ya.
Bye.